Hello everybody, my name is Ratnus, and in today's video, I want to talk about Dragonriding. So Dragonriding, of course, a new feature in Dragonflight. It's sort of like flying, but instead of being able to fly around wherever you want, you have limited speed and control over altitude. That jump off the start there actually was pretty clunky, but you gain speed as you go down, you lose speed as you go up, and you have some points of vigor that you can use to do like little boosts forward or boosts up or big boost forward. And then there's a talent system that currently isn't really working on alpha, at least for me, that lets you further empower the different dragon riding, so it's even a little bit better than this. But if you take off from somewhere high up, and you're careful about how you're moving and you're conscious of using your vigor correctly, you can cover a lot of distance with this. You can go a lot of places, but it's really fun, even though it's nerfed flying, even though it's like not the kind of flying, it's nerfed in the sense that like, if I want to go from here all the way up to the top of this tower behind me, probably not going to be able to do it with the altitude and speed that I have right now. That's something that the ship has probably sailed on that. But, if I want to fly around here, if I want to get somewhere, it does still function for that. But in terms of fun, it's just way better than flying. I think that pretty much everybody who's played with Dragon Riding on Alpha agrees as well that this is just better than flying, way more fun to do. And I want to make the argument that they should invest further in Dragon Riding and do a lot more with it than they at least currently are saying that they intend to do, which they may already be planning to do a lot of this, but I want to make the argument that they definitely should. So right now you can use Dragon Riding only in the Dragon Isles. In addition to flying around the open world with it, there are Dragon Riding races that you can get into. Those are single player and multiplayer. There's PvP ones as well, and they're available at least on single player on 2 different difficulties, one of which is pretty simple, and one of which the timing is a little bit tighter, although even then it's like not, it's not like Trackmania levels of legitimate difficult racing game or anything like that. Oh, here's a dragon race. Okay, I can show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here. Oh, I've ran into a little problem there. Okay, I gotta wait for my vigor to recharge so I can just dash over there. Let's do it. Cool. So yeah, the dragon race, the basic courses, you get some circles to fly through, and where are they? There. Okay. Somewhere over there is the first one. You get the arrow telling you where you're supposed to go, and then you just kind of fly through these, and there are some winds, some tufts of wind here that speed you up as you go through them, and it's very chill, not too challenging, not too many obstacles that are in your way, and the wind speed boosts are really good for making you feel like you're going really fast, have a lot of fun. Oops. Tragedy has befallen me here. And if you int like that, then you just get sent back to the beginning and you get to try again because, I didn't expect I'd need to make such a tight turn. But that's how those ones go. The advanced ones have some hazards that are in the way, and the advanced ones also have some things that give you vigor instead of things that boost your speed, so you have to actually use your buttons more to boost yourself. Those races are really cool. So, here is my argument. This is a system that is really fun. Everybody likes it. They should expand it to the old world, and they should let us use the dragon riding in all of the old zones in WoW. They should let us do dragon riding races in the old zones of WoW as well. They should make dragon riding races for all the old zones as well. And let me lay out some arguments and rebut some potential counter arguments that people are making to this, which is people are saying that, oh, the old zones aren't designed for dragon riding, so that would be a lot of work to prep. In a similar way to like, oh, before, Cataclysm, the old zones weren't designed for flying, and so would have taken a lot of work to be, to make ready for that, right? That's not really a good argument, IMO, because you can use Drakthir Soar racial in the old world, and that is functionally the same as dragon riding. It's a little slower now since they nerfed it, but it is the same technology. It's the same sort of movement. So if Drakthir Soar works somewhere, dragon riding would also work there. So I don't think we're looking at a technical limitation. Counter argument number 2, oh, this is probably something they are planning to do. One thing that actually does make me worried about that is the nerf to soar. So in the nerf to soar, they basically they nerfed soar speed, which is basically dragon riding. It's a Dracthyr racial. It's on a 5-minute cooldown, and they didn't want it to be so much better than regular flying that Dracthyr would be the clear choice for doing something like Chromie time quests, clearing old raid for transmog, pet battling, etc. Now, I think pretty rightly this sentence has gotten a lot of flack for like, is it really a bad thing if there's a race that is, better at this? Is this something that we should do a nerf to this kind of thing for? But either way, I actually don't care too much about that. I instead care about the implication of this, which is the implication is that the best thing that's going to be available in the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor is 410% speed flying mounts, which I think they should actually update the old zones, or not update the old zones, but just enable dragon riding in those old zones. Now, I'm fine if we have to, if it, mid expansion or whatever, we learn the ability to do that, something like that. If that's the plan, if there's a timeline that they have in mind to roll that out, I'm fine with waiting. But it definitely is something that should happen, and it's definitely something that they should invest in further, because when you compare this to like Island Expeditions, which they had to force us to do, Torghast, which they had to force us to do, Warfronts, which they had to force us to do, right? This is actually a system that like obviously it's early days. Maybe we'll burn out a little bit of it, but most people I know that have alpha access have spent at least some amount of time just doing dragon riding for fun all around the Isles or doing the races, and there's not even like a power level reward associated with that. And I think that when it comes out on live, that will be the same thing. I think people will literally just be like, you know what? This is sweet. And they'll fly around. People are using the soar racial to do it in the old world as well, and fly around and zip around. I think that this is a much better system than flying when you look at like Blizzard's arguments for why flying is disabled on expansion launch, right? They want a system, they don't want to just invalidate all this great world design that they do and have us just fly over it and like auto run and tap out or whatever and miss all of that. But dragon riding doesn't have that problem, right? The terrain that's below you is really important for how dragon riding functions. So I think it is better for the players. It's more fun for the players, and it's better in the sense of like, I'm actually going to see all the stuff that they put into the beautiful, Dragon Isles, instead of being like flying over them and missing all that, which was maybe a problem back in like Wrath of the Lich King when you could get cold weather flying pretty early on, and people may have missed a lot of the stuff on the ground in the Storm Peaks and stuff. Speaking of the Storm Peaks, I mean, the Storm Peaks is like a perfect zone for, dragon riding around, right? Like that zone feels like it would be incredibly, incredibly fun to literally just fly the dragon around in. And then when we think about dragon riding races, right? Like dragon riding races, I'm sure that there's work that goes into creating each of those, but I have to imagine that when there's already a zone created, in terms of like how much dev time it takes to create one of the dragon riding races, I imagine it's not too bad. I'm not a development scientist. I know a lot of times players just kind of assume stuff is like way easier than it actually is and takes way less time than it actually does. But I feel like for that in particular, like going to Icecrown Citadel and putting a dragon riding race around the ramparts of Icecrown Citadel, if that takes a small or medium amount of dev time, I feel like that's worth it, because that would be very, very epic. And similarly, like there's all kinds of great places you could do the Silithus Sword, just one of zipping around Orgrimmar and Stormwind, right, flying under that stuff. Blackrock Mountain, iconic dragon-themed place that, a dragon riding race where you're like flying in, going under the chain, and through all the stuff inside Blackrock Mountain, like that. That seems like such a huge slam dunk win to add to the old world, to add that kind of stuff, add world quests to dragon riding, right? Like we had world quests where we played a shell game with some Tortolans. We had world quests where some Kirin Tor put stuff in a barrel and we had to follow around which barrel had the right thing in it, right? Compare that to the idea of instead doing a world quest where where you do a dragon riding race, right? Or where you just dragon ride from point A to point B. Even something like that is like a really fun thing in that space instead. And obviously, I'm not necessarily advocating for the return of like world quests that you have to do, but just like if you do something like that for for a profession mat of some kind that you need for some kind of craft or whatever. So not everybody has to do it. It's not tied to power, but it's something that does feel worth doing. And if you're like looking at your map and it's like, oh, I could go do that and do that world quest, I think that would be a good thing to add as well. So yeah, I think that is most of my argument. Some people would argue that this would invalidate all the old flying mounts, because the way it works right now is that like some mounts are dragon riding mounts, they only work in the Dragon Isles, and some mounts are the old mounts. These ones are just ground mounts in the Dragon Isles, and these are the only ones that you can like fly on. So my argument for this is they should invest the dev time to re-rig particularly the Drakes and the Proto Drakes to be dragon riding mounts. Like these it's like it's a flavor fail if these things can't dragon ride, right? Like they're dragons, right? But even other like plausible flying things I think could look fine with dragon riding. Now I don't know exactly how much like model work needs to be done to give them animations that look convincing for dragon riding, but something like the abyss worm, like if we're willing to say that this thing can float through the air, I think we could have it do like some, you know, cool snaky animations for doing the dragon riding movement instead. Where some other ones, the aerial, so maybe stuff like this, like the flying machine helicopter, maybe those don't get added to the pool of things that can do the dragon riding movement. Maybe it's too jarring to come up with that, but I think most existing flying mounts could look fine doing the dragon riding movement speed stuff, and the ones that couldn't, you could still use as ground mounts in places where that's fine, and you could still use as flying mounts. I'm not saying to take away the functionality of using old flying mounts in the old zones. I'm just saying to add the option to use dragon riding as well. So I think that's most of my argument for what they should do with dragon riding. I hope that as they see a huge amount of positive reception to the system, they will jump on it and they'll capitalize on it, because I think it would be a tremendous shame if this were a system that didn't hit that potential, because it's actually so fun. You know, if you look, like there's so many people that log on to World of Warcraft to raid only that I know of, and that have done tens plus hours of very casual, you know, like something that feels like a very casual system, which is dragon riding on the alpha. So I think that this is a potential huge winner, and it would be a shame if it were not, if the potential were not realized based on that. So that's my argument with dragon riding. I know there's been nerfs to like turn speed and stuff like that on alpha, and I will say I haven't felt like that's been unfair. I feel like the turn speed and how responsive dragon riding is great, and like I think that it's fine that it takes a little bit of time to do a turn, right? Like here's me turning as fast as I can to the side, and like oops, you know, I needed to plan that one ahead better and not do a turn when I was right next to a big pillar. But honestly, I feel like that isn't a problem. I feel like dragon riding at its current power level, pre-talents, this is with 0 dragon riding talents, is still just a blast to use. So yeah, that's my argument on dragon riding. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.